Welcome to the Climate Commission podcast, Climate Chats with Students. I'm Sonya and I'll be your host. I am the Climate Commission Officer for the Climate Commission for UK higher and further education students and leaders. The Climate Commission is a partnership between Association of Colleges, EAUC, the Alliance for Sustainability Leadership in Education, Guild HE, and Universities UK. The Commission is working to mobilise climate action in the further and higher education sector to produce a cohesive, consistent, clear and strong response to the climate emergency. And students are at the heart of our work. And so I began this podcast to showcase their stories and their journeys with sustainability, to share them with the further and higher education sector, but also to honour them and to acknowledge students' meaningful contribution to climate action and to the Climate Commission's work. This episode is Climate Chats with Amy Brazier, and I'm delighted to share it with all of you. So enjoy! So today we have Amy Brazier from Portsmouth College. She's a student at Portsmouth College, and she's also a student on the Climate Commission doing lots of amazing work to engage other students and provide insight to our work. So thanks for joining us, Amy.
That's okay. My pleasure.
Yeah, and today I just want to talk a little bit about your interest in sustainability, what you're studying, and your plans for the future, just so we can share your story with the sector. So you're studying English language and literature, maths, and psychology for your A levels. And so why did you choose to study these specific subjects? And did you always have an interest in them, or did you just become interested as you grew older?
So when I started looking for my A levels, I was quite confident from the start that I wanted to do maths. I've always enjoyed maths, and I did further maths at school, which kind of started to prepare me for it, and I enjoyed that, so I knew that I would enjoy A level, although it's obviously quite a lot more difficult, but I still enjoy it. I tried psychology as a taster session, and I'd never done it before at school. My school didn't offer it, but I thought it was really interesting and something that I wanted to learn more about, so that's why I chose to do psychology. And English was my final choice. I wasn't entirely sure what else to do, so I had a look around on the open evening, and I visited the English department, and I realised I'm quite an avid reader, and I realised that English is a really good subject for that, and I thought it would be a good subject for me, and now I've started studying it. I'm definitely glad I chose it, and I think it's something that I have started to enjoy more as I got older, but I'm definitely glad that I chose those three subjects.
That's brilliant. And so, I mean, I guess the obvious question here is that they're not necessarily climate related subjects, or I mean, they can be, of course. Everything can be climate related, but they're not, a straightforward path to understanding the climate crisis. And so my question is, how did you first become interested in the climate crisis and sustainability? Was it through these subjects, or was it before them? Where in your journey did you?
So obviously over the past few years, like, the climate crisis has become more prominent for everyone, and awareness has increased, and that's great. And I think I've always cared for the environment, but when I got involved at school, at secondary school, I got involved and ran a sustainability project, and I realised just how much change needs to be and can be made. It was quite like an eye-opener to run this project and see the difference that even just, it was a 2-week project, but the difference that could make, and promoting the change. And I think doing the project and also learning about like horrific facts about climate crisis in my geography lessons was also a real eye-opener and made me more concerned and interested in making a difference. I've also been involved in quite a lot of beach cleans, because Portsmouth is an island, so we have lots of beaches. And seeing the amount of rubbish, mainly plastic, just dumped on the beach made me concerned about what we're doing to the planet. And I think that just a culmination of seeing things from like a student perspective, getting the facts in like geography and doing this project, and then seeing all the rubbish that's dumped and other things like that has made me more concerned and wanting to make a difference.
That's so interesting. So it's this combination of personal and academic, I guess.
Yeah.
furthered your interest? Your interest was sort of spurred in high school. Did that happen at all in primary school?
I feel like when I was in primary school, it wasn't like the awareness wasn't there as much.
Mm-hmm.
It Yeah, it was mainly in secondary school that it kind of started to come to light a lot more, and like all the difference that we can make and all of the things that we can do to make a difference and make a change. So yeah, I would say it was mainly secondary school that's really started me being interested and concerned about it.
Mm-hmm. And so when you left secondary school to go to Portsmouth College and you chose these subjects, of course you just explained the rationale, but was there any sort of thinking about the climate crisis in these subjects when you chose them?
Well, obviously, like you said, they're not really traditional climate-related subjects, but so lesson-wise, like there wasn't really, it didn't really surround that. But I knew that there was extracurricular things that I could do,
Right.
such as joining the student union, that would be able to make a difference through that way rather than through the lessons themselves.
That's really interesting. I'm just going to jump to another question before going back to courses. So you're a student commissioner on the Climate Commission, and you do a lot of work in engaging with students, and you've recently launched a survey amongst other initiatives. And so I'm wondering, what was your journey in joining the Climate Commission? Why did you decide to join, and why did you find that it was the place where you wanted to take, one of the places, I guess, where you wanted to take climate action?
So I was asked to make a speech at the launch at Ravensbourne University in London, and I saw just how much of an impact the education sector could make. Like, obviously, I said before that I know that like individual establishments can make changes, but just seeing like a group of universities and colleges working together and seeing the changes that they wanted to make, I just thought that it was a really good opportunity to get involved and make sure the student voice was heard, and that student body can have a positive impact. And I saw the possibilities and hope for systematic change, and I thought that it would be a really good thing to be involved in to make sure that my voice is heard and other students' voices are heard.
I was talking about this with Manvir yesterday when we spoke for the podcast, but I'm really interested in this idea of climate action within institutions, because I think as students and as young people, you know, you can really propel climate action in any area of your life. And so I find it really fascinating when people choose to do it within their institutions.
Yeah.
I think it's because you had that experience as in secondary school.
Yeah, I think especially where me and my friend ran this thing, we were kind of, obviously we had the support of the teachers, but we were in charge of it, and I think that kind of had quite a big impact, us being in charge of running it. It made us realize, like, oh, we can do these things. It doesn't just have to be like us being told what to do.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. And so going back to your courses and this, you know, the work that you're doing on the Climate Commission, I'm just wondering, does your interest in the climate crisis, because you said that, because we just discussed how they're not straightforward paths to the climate crisis, but is there any sort of way, aside from extracurricular, but actually in the course themselves, is there any way that your interest in the climate crisis interacts with your A-level courses?
Not really. I've been thinking about it, but in everything you've done so far, there hasn't really been anything that interacts with it. And I think at the moment anyway, if subjects don't naturally align with climate issues, in contrast to subjects like geography or science, which do, then it just isn't included in the curriculum. But I think it definitely needs to change. There needs to be more across the whole education sector, rather than just in the subjects that are kind of naturally aligned with it.
Yeah. And so how would you like to see these courses, so English language and literature and math and psychology, how would you like to see them changed to embed sustainability and prepare yourself and other graduates for the climate crisis?
I think it's quite difficult to think of ways that it could be embedded. Obviously, it doesn't need to be like the whole course. Oh no, cover everything. But I think it just needs to be in there somewhere, in some way, like teaching people. Because if people take subjects like me and they don't do extracurricular things, or they aren't as aware of the problems, then they're just, through those subjects, they're not really going to learn. So I'm not sure of like a specific way they could be embedded. I think that would take, obviously that would have to have some deep thought into that, but I think it definitely needs to be in there so that people are aware, or more aware, even if they know a bit.
Well, I think something interesting could be, so I mentioned this to Manveer as well, but like I guess a lesson on ethics for everyone, like regardless of your discipline, could be to really think about like the social injustice that the climate crisis causes. Another thing I'm interested in, I'm not sure if you would be, but I guess like creative writing about the climate crisis, and I wonder how that could interact with English language and literature.
Yeah, because I think you'd get to see different people's view on it as well, because obviously creative writing, you can do what you like, basically. So I think that would be quite an interesting way to see how people view it, and then from that you can see what needs to be done or what needs to be implemented.
Perhaps we can do that on the climate commission, some sort of
creative writing.
And so I read that you want to be a teacher after you're done studying, and so I wanted to know a bit more about that. And so why do you want to be a teacher? Is this at all linked to your interest in sustainability and the climate crisis?
So I kind of always wanted to be a teacher. I mean, I've never been like dead set on it. I've always, been open, see what else. I don't know, just something, I think maybe because I've had really good teachers through my whole schooling career, I guess. And I like that you can help people, and that you can kind of, that you're helping build their future. And I think although sustainability isn't really inbuilt into education like we've been saying yet, I'd like to think that as a teacher I would include it. So I would make sure that I teach and worked with sustainable practices, even if it was just small things like not wasting paper, or turning the lights off when they're not used, that can all make an impact. Just like teaching children these things that they can do that would be more sustainable. And also I think it's not just about the children. If you do it as a member of staff, you might have a positive influence on another member of staff, and then that kind of creates like a chain, and then their practices become more sustainable, and it just kind of goes on and leads on to other people. And I think that would be a good way of spreading and making things more sustainable.
Yeah, I agree. And so I'm really interested in the idea of what a career in sustainability and tackling the climate crisis actually means, because it can be so broad. So what do you consider a career in sustainability, and would your teaching and embedding sustainability be to you a career in sustainability?
I think it just needs to be something that embed sustainability into things that you do. So it can still be everyday things, but even they need to be like changed slightly to make them more sustainable. So obviously you're going to have jobs, you're going to have new jobs by the time that I start working like full time, and you'll have the jobs that are around now. And some jobs are sustainable now, but some they just need changing. Like some things can change slightly just to make them more sustainable. I think there isn't one clear way to have a sustainable job. Like you said, there are such a diverse range. But I think having just small changes in jobs will make them sustainable. And when you create the new jobs, think about ways to make them sustainable and make sure that they are thinking about climate issues, rather than just ways to make money or like that.
No, I like the flexibility that we're offered in terms of tackling the climate crisis and embedding sustainability. Essentially, we can really do anything and embed sustainability, which is quite
exactly. Like there's no one way of doing it. There's no one job that will cover it. Literally you can do anything, just need to make a bit of a change.
That's awesome. And so where do you see, we discussed this a bit with the teaching, but if you don't mind expanding on where you see yourself in 10, 15, 20 years.
Okay, so well, obviously if I want to be a teacher, then I'd hope that I'd be in a school, but I think I think I want to be like making a difference, like still obviously within the commission we are trying to make a difference. That is the whole point, you know, trying to make education more sustainable, make changes and things like that. And I think that like needs to continue. So if I am a teacher in 10 years or 15 years, want to be teaching people about sustainability, teaching people about the obviously the current situation, well, not current now but current then, and how things can be changed so that it's not looking as bleak in the future, or things that can be changed so that we don't have to do bigger changes in the future, because if we change it now then it won't come to that in the future.
So sort of this path toward just in affecting change with younger people.
Yeah, because I think working with younger people, that has like a really big impact. If you when they're still learning, if you teach them about these things, then they'll grow up with it, rather than it just being kind of introduced to them when they're a bit older and they already have their ideas of how things should be done. I think implementing it earlier is...
and I guess you have like firsthand experience with that from having learned it in secondary school and been given the opportunity to lead on sustainability projects.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think that's probably where it comes from as well, the fact that I've had that opportunity to do that.
That's really lovely. I think teaching is one of the most noble professions of all time. So I think you're amazing for doing that.
Thank you.
Do you have anything that you wanted to include that I might not have asked you?
Oh no, I was just going to say, I did National Citizen Service, NCS, last summer, and you do a social action project for that. I mean, this doesn't really relate to anything, but...
No,
like,
yeah.
And for our social action project, we decided that we were going to do plastic pollution, which obviously links to climate issues quite a lot. And so we decided to make a plastics bin, because obviously plastics aren't widely recycled, or they're just, you know, chucked in the bin that goes to landfill. So we made a bin for plastics, and we painted and we put sea creatures all over it to show like the impact on the marine life, things like that. It was really big. It was a massive bin, and I can't remember, we had to have like 8 people carry it, I think.
Oh my God.
But we put it in the front of Portsmouth College, and we had really so many people were putting their plastic, and I was really impressed because I thought, oh, you know, people are going to chuck other things in there, but they didn't, and I think that shows that people are aware. So they put only their plastics in there, and they got full really, really quickly. And it just shows that if we recycle things properly, and we dispose of things properly, then it will definitely make a big impact. And people are aware, and they did want to make a change. They wanted to make sure that they were doing things right. So I just thought I'd mention that, because it was really good to see, actually.
That's so interesting. Do you think it was like, was it them being aware but not maybe given support to recycle or to be sustainable than they were, and it was being used? Is that what you think happened?
I think that might be the case. Like, they haven't necessarily had the opportunity as much before, and obviously this was there for them to actually use. I think that might have been the case, and I was just really pleased to see that people were like engaging with it. I mean, obviously it's a bin, not like engaging with the bin, but I mean just within like the whole idea of it.
I think that's amazing, and I think that's just another really, really great example of how students really drive action, you know?
Yeah.
This group of students was able to do that, and I think that's brilliant.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, thanks so much, Amy. I think I'll end there then, if you don't want to say